Hello everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join the Showpad and PandaDoc webinar, Supercharge Your Content, 4 Ways to Increase Active Selling Time. My name is McGuire, Marketing Programs at Showpad. Before we get started, I'd like to note a few housekeeping items. First off, we will be recording this session so that we can provide you with an on-demand version after the event. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to enter those into the questions panel within your BrightTalk console, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers today, and I'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves. First, we have Makita Mikado, CEO at PandaDoc. Good morning, Makita.
Good morning, McGuire. So I'm the CEO of PandaDoc, proposal and contract management software. We help over 5,000 companies to deliver stunning sales proposals and error-free contracts. And as the CEO of the company that focuses on the bottom of the funnel content, I had a pleasure to interact with hundreds of marketing and sales leaders on the topic of the bottom of the funnel content, proposals, contracts, and everything in between.
Thank you, Makita. Next, we have Chris Pollitt, Showpad's Regional VP of Sales. I'll let Chris take it from here. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Thank you, McGuire. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, Makita, McGuire, everyone. As the RVP of Sales at Showpad, focus on enabling our teams to empower over our 1,000 customers and new prospects to sell more effectively. To us, this means making it possible for marketers to work directly with sales and materially impact the sales cycle, equipping sellers with tools to more effectively communicate tailored value and messaging to their prospects and customers, maintain brand consistency, impact the message, and do this all at the points of greatest impact. So really excited to be here and really excited about the topic. So one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk about this is it's a huge problem, I think really only starting to be understood and addressed in the market today. What we see here at Showpad is that the marketing stack right now, and particularly the marketing stack to support sales, is extremely focused or hyper-focused on the top of the funnel. Things like demand generation, predictive analytics, lead capture, lead distribution, et cetera. Beyond the top of the sales funnel stack for marketing, there's next to no focus on technology to give marketers the ability to impact effectiveness of sellers down funnel. They spend blood, sweat, tears, and budgets to generate leads, but lose insight into what happens after the handoff from marketing to sales. So marketers often come in, create demand for products or services, great qualified leads, and amazing content for salespeople to present an impactful, uniform message and support the buyer journey, but then lose visibility and influence over the ultimate measure of their success, which is contribution to revenue. And so it creates holes in the funnel. Right? And so in today's increasingly complex market, often our buyers are becoming more informed at the beginning of the buyer journey. And so this forces a move away from relying so heavily on buyer education and expectation setting, and rather depends upon having extremely relevant, tailored, persona-based messaging that resonates with buyers and addresses needs in real time. So all the effort, money, and technology at the top of the funnel is a great investment. However, in the increasingly complex market, when enablement and visibility disappears in the middle of the buyer journey, the only thing that ends up being measured is inputs and then outcomes, and there's a huge gap in between. So having the data, of course, and being informed, it leads to wins. A differentiation relying not in products, features, or benefits, but in the solutions that you're offering to deliver for customers and prospects, very specific to their current challenges. So having the data understand this and be able to deliver that message at the point of greatest impact is absolutely crucial to succeeding as an organization. This is ubiquitous in marketing and sales without meaning to, that marketers are kind of passively giving up the capability to do so, and so they're suffering from the leaking funnel as are sellers. And so, Makita, I'm sure you see a lot of this at the tail end of the sales cycle, and I'd love to hear what you as a leader at Pandadoc see?
Yeah, Chris, what you're saying about importance of delivering a clear and relevant message 100% applies to the bottom of the funnel, particularly to the sales proposals. And just like with the mid-funnel content, marketing usually drops the ball there, which is a shame considering that this is the last step of the buying journey. Majority of sales teams don't even care to continue telling the story at the bottom of the funnel. They just send a plain quote, contract, or a cookie cutter proposal. Neither document is relevant nor tailored to buyers' needs. And the worst part is that they spend a bunch of time putting one of those documents together. So I'm 100% with you. The problem exists at the bottom of the funnel. It's huge.
Absolutely. I hear you. We meet a lot of customers face to face, and what we hear is a couple things. And I think you hit on a really key point there. And really expectations from buyers are higher than ever today. And so buyers expect you to know what you're talking about. They expect you to have done your research, understand their pains, needs, et cetera, and frankly be able to address those in a way that instills confidence in your solution at each stage of the buyer journey. And so we hear from sellers and marketers that there's a problem with either not enough content or absolute content overload. And so this creates a chaotic problem with content. And at the end of the day, the real sufferer is the customer and prospect. And so at one end of the spectrum, you have marketers that are creating so much content for every possible scenario, use cases, verticals, pain points, and not only that, but they're having to do this for multiple points of the sales cycle, the buyer journey. Oftentimes, they're operating completely siloed from the departments that rely on that content. And so, frankly, they have no closed feedback loop as to what the team actually uses, nor what's resonating with customers, or often even worse, when the decisions are made purely on anecdotal evidence or educated guesses. And so when content gets pushed out to sales teams, most commonly we see things like print, Drive, Dropbox, Box, what have you, and internal portals, and sometimes all of those channels, the chaos gets overwhelming. And being all over the place for sales, those most affected are really your buyers and customers. If you remember that today expectations are higher than ever, yet your buyers are the ones that are getting stuck in content chaos. When the sales team doesn't know what to look for, customer suffers. And so I've seen this personally in so many companies, not only that we've helped at Showpad, but also in organizations that I've worked for where reps can't find the right content, they can't serve it up in the right scenarios to make their buyer feel valued and comfortable and in good hands. And so, Mikita, given what you guys do, at the end of the buyer journey, it's so sensitive. I'm sure you see everything under the sun. And so what's been your experience when it comes to the content chaos at the end of the sales cycle?
Yeah, Chris, what you call a content chaos becomes the content disaster at the bottom of the funnel. The most common scenario is when the sales reps have Excel to put together price quotes, a pile of old proposals they have to use to copy paste from, and a single template for contractual terms. And the scenario where they have to constantly copy paste, jump in and out of a dozen tools, that scenario results in hours of reps' time buried in admin work. And that's the type of work reps don't like to do. And that's the type of work that doesn't result in sales. And then you got errors in pricing, you got wasted days waiting for legal approvals, and then finally, you produce irrelevant, poorly written, and poorly designed proposals. So 100% content chaos continues, and it just becomes a disaster.
Mm-hmm. I'm literally, as a sales leader, cringing and nodding my head at the same time because I see it helping customers, but I've also experienced it as a seller and a leader. And so, it's a complex selling environment, and there's a lot of products, multiple ways to position them, price them, and not only that, but a multitude of different buyer profiles to which you have to craft your message. And so, pile onto that, different geographies, multiple decision makers. I think, what is it now? They say 5.7 or 6.7 decision makers often involved, or maybe even groups involved in complex sales processes today, and oftentimes with competing priorities. Each one of those scenarios requires a tailored, unique message and positioning to ensure that deals have a best chance to win and that customers, win as well. And so on top of that, all the new initiatives that great companies are focused on, like launching new products, breaking into new verticals, territories, or geographies, constantly rolling out new playbooks and processes, means that each one of these things requires a unique way to communicate. And the biggest problem that we see in our business, I'm sure, Makita, you see this as well, is that right now, 50% of reps are hitting their quotas. There's a huge gap between top performers and underperformers, and compounding that issue, CSO Insights recently said that reps are spending about 36% of their time selling, which, as a sales leader, is frightening. And so, look, there's a lot of stuff to do as a sales rep. Travel, find content, research, practice your presentation, administrative work, just a lot of stuff that doesn't lead to the business results that drive success at scale. And at Showpad, we're really starting to see a divergence in thought on the sales side. The old guard, if you will, is still hyper-focused on sales productivity, but what we're starting to see is a focus shift or a sea change towards sales effectiveness. While declining sales productivity is a huge pain point for sales leaders, part of that is just purely because of the increasing complexity of scale, complexity of message. And so what this really means is that sales leaders and marketers should focusing on making or hone in on making their sellers more effective. And a lot of times we hear, what is the difference? I hear this all the time. They seem almost like the same statement, but what we see is that with buyers not being as dependent on sellers to gain knowledge about solutions to their challenges, and frankly, with the increasing ease in finding everything that potential buyers need, is that salespeople need to evolve, and they need to tailor their conversations to address the real pains their customers are having right now. This means, I guess, for lack of a better term, like sales-ready insights, value, and real solutions that are actually matched to the real challenges faced by their different buyers and stakeholders. And so what we're seeing is that successful leaders are focusing on a few key things. They're getting away from measuring productivity per se, things like how many calls, how many opportunities, how many people that their sellers are meeting with, and instead focusing on selling effectiveness. So things like making their interaction have value, not just having the perfect pitch or the winning presentation or that sort of silver bullet message that wins and then playing the numbers game, but actually focusing on the value, the mutual alignment, and the quality of crucial sales conversations. And look, in addition to managing sellers and closers, I've run large teams of sales development for almost 4 years now. And so with sales development, clearly I understand the value of replicating and scaling sales effort. But one of the things I've learned having run sales development for so long is that it's really easy to run really, really fast, but in circles. And so to get away from that, top sales and marketing leaders are starting to focus on making sellers effective while reducing non-value added and redundant activities. This not only this focus on the quality of sales interactions and empowering reps to have more effective sales conversation actually equals true productivity with greater returns. So what this means for sales leaders, one, is they need to discontinue focusing on the kind of the silver bullet killer pitch, but instead work hand in hand with marketing to align the stories that they're telling to the buyer journey and create sales stories that in a very flexible way can be tailored using both the message and the content to individual buyers' business challenges and desired outcomes. So what we're seeing in this shifting of focus, it's resulting in significant effectiveness gains and empowers the sales force to navigate the buyers through the journey in the ways that lead to more wins for the company and better experiences for customers and prospects. So when marketing is evaluating ways to support the sales team's ability to sell, it has to include content, tools, and training that are focused on navigating the sales and buying process with an increasingly complex selling environment in mind. So you just can't expect dynamic results without focusing on a combination of productivity and effectiveness. So maximizing the number of touches, but also the quality of those touch points. And to do that, you have to start with the customer. You've got to align with the journey, not the one that you hope to shape for them, but their actual journey. And so whether you do or not have educated buyers, you have to be able to guide the customer through discovery, education, validation, proposal, and close, or whatever your sales cycle looks like. But you have to be able to do it with so many factors in play. So industry, geography, buyer persona, total audience, pains, et cetera. And the customer's world comes first. You need to be able to enable the sales force to adjust to that in a way that's flexible, tailored, and impactful. And so you don't know where you're going unless you know what you've done. And so to do that, you can't just stab in the dark. You have to be able to measure what is successful. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all pitch. There really is no silver bullet, as much as sellers would love to think so. Marketing, if they have the ability to understand what sales actually uses, and in turn what resonates with customers, this allows them to understand what can be reused and where to focus on and where to improve. And so, for the most part, sales understands what quote-unquote sales-ready messaging actually resonates with customers and gets them to further engage in the buyer journey. But oftentimes it never makes it back to marketers, or only does so as anecdotal evidence and isn't a data-driven process. And ultimately, customers benefit from having the message that fits their expectations and the story that makes them viscerally feel their pain and also feel comfortable they're in the right hands to solve that pain. And so without insight, measurement, and enablement, you contribute literally to the problem of, as I mentioned earlier, teams running really, really fast in a circle. It actually actively hinders your seller's ability to be effective no matter how productive they are. And so, Makita, I'm very curious that the tail end of the sales cycle is absolutely so powerful and provides one of the most dynamic opportunities to impact the close of the deal. And so I'm sure you see a ton of best and worst practices, yeah?
Yeah, Chris, absolutely. And again, I 100% agree with you that this is one of the most crucial parts, if not the most crucial parts of the sales cycle. So I'll start by sharing a practice that is, in my opinion, the best of the best. And that is, instead of trying to close a deal with a quote or a contract, use sales proposals. And I have stats on the slide that show how well each document type closes. First of all, what's the difference between those three documents? Well, proposals have more information other than pricing details and contractual terms. They position your product or service as a relevant solution. They really tell a story. And they're tailored to your prospects. They're more effective, and the proof is in the numbers. And that's what you're seeing on this slide. PandaDoc is used to deliver thousands of quotes, contracts, and proposals every day. So what we did is we measured the performance of each of those documents. How many of those documents become completed? How many of those documents close deals? And the proof is in numbers. You can see that proposals close more than 2 times better compared to quotes, and they close at 11% higher rate compared to contracts. So if you want to increase your sales and you want to do it fast, I think one of the fastest and shortest paths to it is to start sending sales proposals. That's the best practice I can share. But Now, since we decided that proposals is the way to go, let's talk about elements to a compelling sales proposal. So the thing about sales proposals is that your proposals are going to be compared to competing ones. Therefore, you want to make sure that they're better. You want to make sure that they tell a better story, they're more relevant, and more personalized. Those are really the only ways to justify a higher price, right? And those are really the only ways to sell a solution, not try to have a pricing war with your competitors, because you definitely don't want to get in that situation. So here at PandaDoc, we found out that there are elements of a sales proposal that help to close more deals and that help to get that proposal spend a lot of time more on. So let's start with the first section that I recommend to include in every proposal, and that is a cover letter. We learned at PandaDoc that at least 30% of recipients' time is spent on the cover letter. We also learned that busy executives, also known as decision makers, in many cases don't even go beyond that section. So 2 tips on the cover letter. First of all, require your reps to write every cover letter from scratch so that you can make sure that every cover letter in every proposal that you send out is tailored to buyer's needs, is relevant, and is speaking to the decision maker and is calling that decision maker by name. And also, another tip is to summarize the entire proposal within this cover letter, because again, if the CEO of the company you're trying to sell to only going to look at this cover letter, you want to make sure that they get the whole, the whole story that you're trying to tell within this proposal. The next section that I advise to have within your proposals is the social proof. What is the social proof? It could be a client quote or a short case study that you put in a proposal. And those are great because nothing makes you more relevant comparing to making a similar company successful. If you made someone who is similar to me successful, then that gets you so much closer to my pain point, to my business. And we advise marketers to build a library of those short client quotes and case studies that are easily accessible by sales to include in every proposal. To make a case study even more compelling to your buyer, you may want to consider including a video testimonial or video case study. We found at PandaDoc that videos in proposals are viewed 5 times more than any other piece of content in the entire proposal. So videos are super powerful, and you shouldn't discount how much people just want to watch videos over reading. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's true. The next section that's important to have is legal terms. Ensure that any legal terms you include within your proposal are up to date and have been reviewed by your general counsel. Add legal terms. I should have started with that actually. Add legal terms to ensure your proposals are legally binding and you don't have to follow up with a contract. You may also want to consider locking the terms from editing, so there is no risk of delivering the wrong terms to your prospect. And don't expose yourself to legal risks. That's the worst thing that can happen. So lock those terms. Make sure sales reps can't edit them. And then legal terms should really be the only section that needs occasional review by a lawyer. And that should be the only section that their legal team would want a red line on. The next section I have in the slide that we recommend to add is pricing. You absolutely have to add pricing. But what we recommend to do is to have pricing options. So, and that's more of a hack. And that's actually one of my favorite ones, which is to include optional a la carte, so-called a la carte items that your prospect can select in addition to main pricing. By giving those nice-to-have options, you can potentially increase your deal size by up to 10%. And those options could also help when it comes to negotiations and when you absolutely have to discount. So every good sales rep, every good account executive is going to know what she or he's selling by the time they're sending a sales proposal. And they're likely to have discussed pricing by the time. So what you can do at that stage, and the hack that we propose and we advise to do is to add those optional items that would just help to upsell. So the next section I have on the slide that we advise to include in your sales proposals is so-called closing tools, closing calls to action, and those are basically either electronic signatures or credit card entry forms. Every proposal should end with a strong call to action. Every proposal should be able to close the deal for you. That should be the only document you send to a customer to get their commitment. And within PandaDoc, we offer two of those strong calls to action: an electronic signature and the ability for the prospect to pay for your product or service immediately after they sign. And the truth is, once people sign with an electronic signature, they're not gonna, it's a legally binding electronic signature. It is as legally binding, actually every electronic signature is as legally binding as a handwritten signature in most of the developed countries worldwide. But even in like third world countries or countries that didn't get their law up to speed with electronic signing, even in those countries, if people committed with a signature, they're not going to back out of the deal. They're going to commit. It's done. So those are the elements that I and our team at PandaDoc advise us to add to every single sales proposal. And we promise, if you were not doing this before, if you consider it, if you test it out, you're going to have an increase in close rates within your proposals. So now the question is, and now that we know what good proposals should include, the question is, how do you enable sales reps with getting it all done while not wasting days of their time? Let's talk about how to enable sales reps to send out stunning, well-performing sales proposals. How do you make sure that every proposal is relevant? How do you make sure it tells a good story? How do you make sure it has no errors? At the end of the day, not every sales rep's last name is Twain or Picasso. So you know what? Marketers better make sure that they enable the reps with the right tools to deliver stunning proposals. Marketers better make sure that they enable the reps with the right content. It's marketers' job to control the content and produce amazing content, and control the brand, control the design of whatever goes out, and produce great-looking sales proposals templates. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about with this slide. So the solution to stunning sales proposals, to well-performing proposals, is a library of proposal templates, so that your proposals have less errors, the content is aligned with marketing messaging, legal, and finance, and marketing is the function of the business that is the best suited to build this library. marketers are just, they're normally just better at creating amazing content, as well as setting up company-wide tools. So standardizing your proposal process will allow your sales reps to have a lot more selling time and a lot less admin work. And to summarize, organizations need to be sending sales proposals, not blank quotes, not contracts, and marketing needs to enable the reps with the right tools to deliver great proposals, right content, right information, and also right design of those documents. Standardizing your proposal process will allow your sales reps to have more time selling, and you can achieve all of this using PandaDoc, shamelessly advertising our product. But regardless of a tool, as long as you have both teams aligned, as long as you have marketing and sales focusing on the middle of the funnel, focusing on the bottom of the funnel, and as long as both teams are aligned, your revenue is going to grow. I can almost guarantee that. Do you agree, Chris?
Absolutely.
So thank you both, Chris and Makita. That was a great presentation. And it does look like we had a few questions come in already. And again, if you had a question you'd like answered, please feel free to type it into the questions panel on BrightTalk, and we'll do our best to answer it before the end of the presentation. So one of the first questions that we had come through, and Makita, I think this is directed towards you, is, and you kind of mentioned it at the end of the presentation, but it would be interesting to know, and I think one of our attendees is asking this, that, you're talking about reducing admin time, but do you think you could specifically speak towards, how those standardized workflows would allow sales reps to kind of speed up the process of writing a cover letter from scratch?
Sure. So let's start with the process of reducing the amount of time that sales reps have to spend on putting proposals together. The way it works within PandaDoc is that a marketing team sets up a library of document templates as well as content templates to put those sales proposals together. And based on a deal, based on a situation, on a persona, on a customer, sales reps just pick a proper template and then just drag and drop relevant snippets of content into the body of a document. And then when it comes to cover letter, that part is just required to be written from scratch. Again, talking about PandaDoc, our tool has an online editor somewhat similar to Office 365, Google Docs, where sales reps just write that cover letter from scratch each and every time. And, you can have a template for that, but internally within PandaDoc, we actually require every sales rep to write a cover letter from scratch, make it personal, and, I also advise them to make cover letters maybe sometime, humorous or funny, because you want to give that busy decision maker a reason on why they should go beyond just pricing information, quite frankly.
Most definitely. Thanks for answering that. So another question we had, and Chris, I'll start with you, but both of you kind of spoke to the importance of tailoring content towards the customer's needs. So Chris, can you share an example of what that might look like in kind of the day-to-day of a sales rep or marketer using Showpad?
Yeah, I think there's some steps that need to be taken first, and I think the number one best practice that we see related to this is the best organizations review their ideal customer profile and their I'm going to make up an acronym here. So ICP is well known, but IBP as well, ideal buyer persona. They actually review those either every quarter or every 2 quarters. And of course, that depends on the size of organization and how they're set up. But step one is to review that on a quarterly or every 2 quarter basis. because that will direct where you prioritize your sort of tailored content, right? And if you have to produce a lot of content for buyer personas, for geographies, pain points, that kind of stuff, you need to understand what that is and how that shifts. And so that's step one, right? Understand and consistently review that as an executive team, leadership team, et cetera, and work really closely with marketing, product marketing, demand generation, even to kind of constantly prioritize this and add new things to the list and take things off. Now, step two is actually creating a content map around that. And hopefully everyone has a content map and just has to fill in the gaps. But the idea with someone using a tool like Showpad, using a platform like Showpad, is to build that out by buyer persona for different. We choose to do verticals here, but we have a lot of our customers that build out very specific content maps for everything from verticals to segments to company sizes to even specific occurrences in specific industries, right? Like if you have focused very heavily on the financial industry, you should understand what the big kind of movements are in the space, and then you're able to kind of plug that content map into a platform like Showpad. And so sales reps can work with marketers work with sales reps to provide really very relevant, timely messaging that addresses major movements in segments or verticals or what have you. And when that map is at the fingertips of your sellers in the field, they're sort of never caught unawares in sales meetings, because they're able to pivot, kind of mid-conversation, whatever direction that conversation goes. And so you can't do that without constant, consistent review of what matters to those buyers and what matters to those ideal customers. And so, I could go in for literally hours into specifics on that, but I think the understanding and the content map are really the two key best practices.
Thanks for going into that, Chris. And Makita, I know you were talking a bit about that earlier. Would you like to share any further examples for how that fits into PandaDoc solution?
Sure. So within PandaDoc, as I mentioned, we have a library of. Sorry, the question is on the marketing and sales alignment.
Sorry, just to backtrack. It's on kind of the importance of tailoring that content towards the customer's needs. I know you spoke towards tailoring that cover letter, but are there any other examples within PandaDoc as a solution that tailor that content?
Absolutely. So we have a feature within the product called Content Library that allows you to templatize snippets of content that you can tag, and your tags could be something like the industry of the customer you're sending that proposal to, or the buyer persona, or the problem and solution that you're proposing. So what happens then, when your sales reps are building sales proposals, they are just looking for a quote from someone in a relevant industry, or they're looking for a case study done with a similar buyer persona, or they're looking for a story on how you solved a relevant problem. So that it just makes content discovery a lot easier, so that when they discover that proper piece of content that makes their proposal super relevant, they just drag and drop the snippet of content.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for answering that. And it does look like we had a question specifically pertaining to that, but also to this one attendee is using Salesforce. Does that fit into Salesforce and other CRMs?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question someone is asking: is there a tool that plugs into Salesforce that helps to host proposals as well as suggests proper templates? There's a wonderful tool. It's called PandaDoc. And a Panda, it's a mix of a document and a Panda. It doesn't happen normally, but There's a company with this name that I run. Check it out. We have an integration with Salesforce. The way it works within Salesforce is that your sales reps click on a button to generate a new proposal. They can do it within opportunity record or within account record or within actually any other record in Salesforce. And we'll take data out of Salesforce. We'll merge data with whatever template for sales proposal they choose, so they don't have to copy paste in and out of Salesforce. And we'll allow them to build a proposal within Salesforce, and we'll automatically attach that sales proposal to the record where that proposal was originated, opportunity or account record, together with the status of the sales proposal. So your sales reps not only will have a list of documents sent or proposals sent to that particular prospect, but also statuses of those documents. They'll know if the recipients of the documents opened them. They'll know if they looked at this proposal. They'll know how many times they opened it, if they forwarded it, and yada yada. So there are a lot of benefits, and I highly recommend you to check out our integration with Salesforce, pandadoc.com/integrations/Salesforce. Check it out.
Thanks, Makita. Chris, was there anything else that you wanted to follow up with that specifically for Showpad?
Yeah, so I'm going to be a little late to the party. I wanted to on the previous question just tag on one other thing on the related to the, I'd mentioned the ideal buyer persona and ideal customer profile. One thing that we found really useful here to kind of identify what the big movements in our verticals or industries are is there's a lot of great research firms where you can actually source out. I think if I'm trying to remember where I used the last one, I think it was called Owly Nerds. But it's basically a bunch of MBA candidates that go and they do a ton of research. You can contract it out and get it for pretty inexpensive. And actually, I literally just pulled up the doc right now, but we had these guys go out and do a bunch of research on executive priorities for our kind of top 10 industries and find out, what do the CEOs, the CMOs, the CSOs care about? What are their top 3 priorities they're trying to impact in their business? And so there are a lot of really smart ways that you can get very deep information to create content maps that address the very specific concerns of your ideal buyer personas. And if anyone has questions, post-event, I'm always happy to kind of provide some suggestions for ways to do that without using a lot of organizational resources. But to echo Makita, obviously Showpad is something that works very well with Salesforce as well. I think PandaDoc does an amazing job of serving up the right kinds of proposals at the end of the sales cycle to make sure you close deals. And Showpad, obviously, with the ability to recommend content to salespeople in the heat of the moment, right in Salesforce, is a really powerful tool. Understand what sort of matches or what lines up with where you are in the customer conversation, and have that serve up to salespeople in Salesforce is a very powerful thing. And so, I'll go shameless plug as well. But I do think, salespeople, no matter how great their tool stack is, and believe me, there are a lot of amazing solutions that get the information into Salesforce, but salespeople still have to live in Salesforce. So the more that you can serve that up in that environment, the more convenient for the salespeople are, and the more likely it is to get leveraged. So, I think that's a really powerful piece of Showpad and PandaDoc is that we reduce admin time by capturing everything into Salesforce, but also make Salesforce a more effective tool by serving up actionable behaviors within the Salesforce environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, most definitely. And thank you for answering that, Chris. So we are getting down on time, but there is one question that I would like to pull in as well. Chris, you started your portion of the presentation, talking about the leaking funnel and kind of that disconnect between sales and marketing throughout the buyer's journey. And I think that's been, kind of a common thread throughout this entire presentation. So I would like to know, kind of what one key takeaway may be for our audience on how to really increase that collaboration between sales and marketing.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to, I think really it's just to create a regular cadence around, use your process, use your tools, use, use your data to create the impetus for discussion, right? I think one of the things that we see is that a lot of sales and marketers spend too much time meeting and talking anecdotally. I think just, making sure that you capture data points on how you communicate what works with customers and let that guide the discussion, but make sure that there is a regular cadence between sales and marketing to truly come together on a go-to-market approach. Content map. I think we see just too often that sales, marketing, and even sales enablement operate in silos versus having a regular cadence with an agenda that drives, that is driving towards a specific goal of having a unified go-to-market strategy. And even if you do that anecdotally, that's great. But if you can make it data-driven, it's a lot more powerful.
Yeah, and Chris, I want to add to this. When it comes to sales and marketing alignment, or actually any kind of alignment, what we're talking about here really is we're talking about building a relationship between two departments within companies. And the best way to build a relationship, any relationship, is to actually try to help the party you want to build that relationship with. So when it comes to sales and marketing alignment, it's very important that both teams, both departments are actually trying to help each other. And by doing that, they're also helping the company. And by doing that, they're also increasing the revenue. So, for example, sales reps are always in the weeds. They're talking to customers. They're getting information firsthand. So they can help marketers to score leads better, define what a marketing qualified lead is. They can help marketers to open up new channels. They can feed ideas to marketers. Similarly, marketers got to help sales. Marketers got to help sales by I want to say implementing PandaDoc and ShowPad, but even like taking this out of the table, marketers can help sales with content because they're good at it. They've been doing it for so long. They invested millions of dollars already in the top of the funnel content. So why not to take it to the bottom of the funnel and make it better there? It's you help me, I help you, and that relationship just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And when both organizations are genuinely trying to help each other, great businesses happen. So like what we really talked about today, we talked about PandaDoc, we talked about ShowPad, but what we really talked about today is that marketers got to step in and help sales with content, and that does increase amount of time sales reps are gonna be selling, and it does increase the revenue. It increases the close rate. And the way to do that is to enable sales with middle of the funnel content, presentations, case studies, white papers, all that jazz. Measure performance of the content, ensure the content is being used, ensure the content performs. And then at the bottom of the funnel, enable sales reps with a library of proposal templates, help them to produce good-looking, well-performing documents, and ensure that whatever goes out looks great and actually says the right things, says the things you want your brand you want your brand to be associated with, because you already spent millions of dollars. at the top of the funnel. Make sure this investment goes throughout the entire funnel. Like, do you agree, Chris? This is like really what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, I think, I worked with Demand Gen for a really long time, and they have so much powerful data at the top of the funnel. And I think that, yeah, you're absolutely right. And really, it's just instead of having siloed goals, if you can align those goals and drive towards those throughout the entirety of the customer conversation, the buyer journey, et cetera, both teams get stronger, both teams get better, and both teams benefit. And of course, in turn, the organization benefits. You're absolutely right.
So thank you both, Chris and Makita, and it does look like we're just about out of time. If you are interested in looking for further resources, starting a free trial with either PandaDoc or Showpad, feel free to check out our websites. And again, if you had a question that we didn't get to, we will do our best to answer those directly over email after the events. And for those who may have missed a few minutes or would like to share with a colleague, we will also be sending a link to the on-demand version to all attendees and registrants. Again, thanks for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
A cookie-cutter proposal. Neither document is relevant nor tailored to buyers' needs. And the worst part is that I spent a bunch of time putting one of those documents together. So I'm 100% with you. The problem exists at the bottom of the funnel. It's huge.
Absolutely. I hear you. We meet a lot of customers face-to-face, and what we hear is a couple things. And I think you hit on a really key point there. And really expectations from buyers are higher than ever today. And so buyers expect you to know what you're talking about. They expect you to have done your research, understand their pains, needs, et cetera, and frankly be able to address those in a way that instills confidence in your solution at each stage of the buyer journey. And so we hear from sellers and marketers that there's a problem with either not enough content or absolute content overload. And so this creates a chaotic problem with content, and at the end of the day, the real sufferer is the customer or prospect. And so at one end of the spectrum, you have marketers that are creating so much content for every possible scenario, use cases, verticals, pain points, and not only that, but they're having to do this for multiple points of the sales cycle, the buyer journey. Oftentimes, they're operating completely siloed from the departments that rely on that content. And so, frankly, they have no closed feedback loop as to what the team actually uses, nor what's resonating with customers, or often even worse, when the decisions are made purely on anecdotal evidence or educated guesses. And so when content gets pushed out to sales teams, most commonly we see things like print, drive. So this forces a move away from relying so heavily on buyer education and expectation setting, and rather depends upon having extremely relevant, tailored, persona-based messaging that resonates with buyers and addresses needs in real time. So all the effort, money, and technology at the top of the funnel is a great investment. However, in the increasingly complex market, when enablement and visibility disappears in the middle of the buyer journey, the only thing that ends up being measured is inputs and then outcomes, and there's a huge gap in between. So having the data, of course, and being informed, it leads to wins. A differentiation relying not in products, features, or benefits, but in the solutions that you're offering to deliver for customers and prospects, very specific to their current challenges. So having the data understand this and be able to deliver that message at the point of greatest impact is absolutely crucial to succeeding as an organization. This is ubiquitous in marketing and sales without meaning to, that marketers are kind of passively giving up the capability to do so, and so they're suffering from the leaking funnel as are sellers. And so, Makita, I'm sure you see a lot of this at the tail end of the sales cycle, and I'd love to hear what you as a leader at PandaDoc see.
Yeah, Chris, what you're saying about importance of delivering a clear and relevant message 100% applies to the bottom of the funnel, particularly to the sales proposals. And just like with the mid-funnel content, marketing usually drops the ball there. which is a shame considering that this is the last step of the buying journey. Majority of sales teams don't even care to continue telling the story at the bottom of the funnel. They just send a plain quote contract or,
Dropbox box, what have you, and internal portals, and sometimes all of those channels. The chaos gets overwhelming. And being all over the place for sales, those most affected are really your buyers and customers. If you remember that today expectations are higher than ever, yet your buyers are the ones that are getting stuck in content chaos. When the sales team doesn't know what to look for, customer suffers. And so I've seen this personally in so many companies, not only that we've helped at Showpad, but also in organizations that I've worked for where reps can't find the right content, they can't serve it up in the right scenarios to make their buyer feel valued and comfortable and in good hands. And so, Makita, given what you guys do, at the end of the buyer journey, it's so sensitive. I'm sure you see everything under the sun. And so what's been your experience when it comes to the content chaos at the end of the sales cycle?
Yeah, Chris, what you call a content chaos becomes the content disaster at the bottom of the funnel. The most common scenario is when the sales reps have Excel to put together price quotes, a pile of old proposals they have to use to copy paste from, and a single maybe like template for contractual terms. And the scenario where they have to constantly copy paste, jump in and out of a dozen tools, that scenario results in hours of reps' time buried in admin work. And that's the type of work reps don't like to do. And that's the type of work that doesn't result in sales. And then you got errors in pricing, you got wasted days waiting for legal approvals.
Our 1,000 customers and new prospects to sell more effectively. To us, this means making it possible for marketers to work directly with sales and materially impact the sales cycle, equipping sellers with tools to more effectively communicate tailored value and messaging to their prospects and customers, maintain brand consistency, impact the message, and do this all at the points of greatest impact. So really excited to be here and really excited about the topic. So one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk about this is it's a huge problem, I think really only starting to be understood and addressed in the market today. What we see here at Showpad is that the marketing stack right now, and particularly the marketing stack to support sales, is extremely focused or hyper-focused on the top of the funnel. Things like demand generation, predictive analytics, lead capture, lead distribution, et cetera. Beyond the top of the sales funnel stack for marketing, there's next to no focus on technology to give marketers the ability to impact effectiveness of sellers down funnel. They spend blood, sweat, tears, and budgets to generate leads, but lose insight into what happens after the handoff from marketing to sales. So marketers often come in, create demand for products or services, create qualified leads and amazing content for salespeople to present an impactful, uniform message and support the buyer journey, but then lose visibility and influence over the ultimate measure of their success, which is contribution to revenue. And so it creates holes in the funnel. Right? And so in today's increasingly complex market, often our buyers are becoming more informed at the beginning of the buyer journey. And so
hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join the Showpad and PandaDoc webinar, Supercharge Your Content, 4 Ways to Increase Active Selling Time. My name is McGuire, Marketing Programs at Showpad. Before we get started, I'd like to note a few housekeeping items. First off, we will be recording this session so that we can provide you with an on-demand version after the event. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to enter those into the questions panel within your BrightTalk console, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers today, and I'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves. First, we have Makita Mikado, CEO at PandaDoc. Good morning, Makita.
Good morning, McGuire. So I'm the CEO of PandaDoc, proposal and contract management software. We help over 5,000 companies to deliver stunning sales proposals and error-free contracts. And as the CEO of the company that focuses on the bottom of the funnel content, I had a pleasure to interact with hundreds of marketing and sales leaders on the topic of the bottom of the funnel content, proposals, contracts, and everything in between.
Thank you, Makita. Next, we have Chris Pollitt, Showpad's Regional VP of Sales. I'll let Chris take it from here. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Thank you, McGuire. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, Makita, McGuire, everyone. As the RVP of Sales at Showpad, focus on enabling our teams to empower over